What we're going to do in this tutorial is look at how to use our tiling materials combined with Vertex paint to get variety in our modular assets. So we can see here we have a kind of standard modular wall, and then on this side we have one that's used a little bit of Vertex paint just to create some kind of dirt area around here and add this kind of whitewash style material to the brick and kind of dirt on the floor here. So obviously using this we can, if we just jump into Vertex paint, just start painting something on there. See, I'm painting a little bit of dirt on there, and if we just say select our green channel, you can see we can paint dirt onto there too. Sorry, you can see we can paint different kind of materials onto our asset, and we can do the same on this other asset as well, assuming it has the kind of same materials applied. And it's a really great way to get a lot of variety into our modular pieces. It works particularly well when you have lots of the same kind of modular piece. You can do it to break up variety, to add variety, and it also works really well for if you want to, if you have kind of assets in your scene that have a lot of wear and tear and that kind of thing. It's really great for putting that kind of wear and tear and having variety to it. So let's start making the shader then. If we just right click and go to new material, let's call this a Vertex paint example. We'll double click on that to load it up, make sure it's on the correct monitor, like so. Then what we're going to want to do is just bring in two textures just to act as kind of two different albedos. You can see here I have a bunch of tiling textures. Now at the moment in my tiling textures I have all of these split up into individual kind of channels. Now it's not the most efficient way of doing this. What we can do is obviously combine our AO and our roughness and our metallic and so on into one texture set, and that's definitely a better way to do it. Especially when one of the issues with this is using so many textures. So I will show you how to do that at the kind of end of this tutorial. Okay, so first of all let's bring in our brick albedo. So we'll just bring that in as our base color, like so. And then I'm just going to use this kind of concrete albedo as well. So we'll bring those two in and we're going to mix between those. Next we'll hold down L and click to create a layer. And what we're going to do is just drag our brick into B here and our concrete into A. And I'm just going to lay this out slightly better, like so. I'll drag that into base color, and then if we just right click and just go to the Vertex, we'll find the Vertex color node, and what I'm going to do is just plug red into my alpha. So at its most kind of basic level, this is just going to paint, using our red channel, we're going to paint this kind of concrete layer over our kind of base layer. So if we just save that, and on our other one here, I'm going to go back to my shader here. I'm now going to drag this onto there. So we can see we've got our basic shader under there. So we can see we've got a basic brick under there. And if we go to red here, red is going to paint this concrete on top. So Vertex paint, you can find it in this tab here. Now all we want to do is just come here and just make sure that we have red ticked on in our slot here. Now we have different brush settings too that we can mess around with, but for now just click and you'll see that you will paint straight onto there like so. Now there are another little thing I want to discuss with you here as well is the importance of having a reasonably high topology in your model. So let's have a look at the topology for this asset. So if we just double click here on the actual asset, make sure it's on the right model, and then we'll go to our wireframe. So you'll see here I have a lot of topology in this asset. Now the reason I have this is because Vertex paint works by painting different colors onto our vertices. So the more vertices you have, the more variation you can achieve in your Vertex paint. So if we just go double click on this example here and then go to wireframe, you can see this asset barely has any model information at all. Let's cancel that. We'll just close these two down. So I'll just drag in the other the original kind of asset that we were working on. Go to our move mode here and just drag this into place. And then what I'm going to want to do is go to Vertex Paint, apply our example onto this surface. And if I just go back to Vertex Paint and try painting, you'll see nothing happens until I'm in the corner here. So what this is doing is saying, well, when you're painting in the middle here, there's no vertices. So it's not able to achieve any vertex paint. However, if I'm down in the corner, it will, and it will then fall off from there to the kind of next vert. So if I hold shift, I can minus that paint off. So yeah, the model is very dependent on your topology since you are painting vertices. So one issue with this pipeline is that you're going to be using a lot more vertices in your model. So important places to think about where you're going to have verts, if we just jump back into our asset here. Like really, this should be made so that each of these actually kind of sits on that level there. For each kind of corner bit, you want to have quite a lot of verts. For any kind of edge that meets here, like a right angle, you want to have vertices along there too. And really, in this case, I should also have kind of vertices here and here, because wherever there's a kind of a bend or a right angle or someone like that, I should add extra kind of loops in. I probably even want another one there and there as well. It also would have been sensible to have kind of edges around this shape here as well, so I could paint kind of fall off coming off this shape. So I haven't actually done that. Obviously, I didn't intend to use this asset specifically for the Vertex Paint tutorial. Okay, so we've got this kind of basic Vertex Paint working here, but there's quite a lot of problems with it. So quite a lot of limitations with it. At the moment, we can only really paint from a linear kind of fall off. So going from full color to full to another color. So it's just a kind of gradient fall off. So we want to be able to control that a lot better. We're also only able to paint kind of one material here because we've only linked up one material to the red slot. What we can do is actually link another one to the green slot, another one to the blue slot, another one to the alpha. So you could paint concrete, you could paint dirt, grass, scratches on metal, and so on like that. So you can have up to your base layer and then four different potential paint layers. So the way we can control where this falls off rather than just being a linear kind of gradient like that is by using a height map. So if we just go to our brick material here, I'm just going to drag this kind of texture in the scene, and we're going to use that as a height map. Now we're going to want to create a few nodes in order to use this properly. So let's drag our vertex color over here for a start. Stick those up there. So let's add a multiply. We'll put an add. We'll add a power. And we'll add a clamp. And then the first thing we want to do is link our height map to our vertex color. Then we want to add those two together. And then we want to link that to a power, and we want to add a scalar parameter, and we're going to call this blend power. So basically this will let us control the level of the blend for our height texture, so that become more clear. Let's just put a default value of 1 in there for now. And then we'll drag that into a clamp. So a clamp, because what we're doing here is we're multiplying these two assets together, then we're adding them together as well, and then we're controlling the actual power with this blend power node. So sometimes values can come out from 0 to 1, and the vertex color is controlled from 0 to 1 here. So we want to make sure that those values always sit in that 0 to 1 range. So that's all the clamp node basically does. So the next thing we want to do is, rather than using just our straight red channel, we want to drop that into there. So what these nodes are essentially doing is combining the red channel with this height map and making sure that our values always fit into that 0 to 1 range. So let's just hit save on that. And I'll just zoom out, make sure you can see that for when you're when you're working through the tutorial. So if we just browse back to here now, we can already start to see some of this is having an effect. I'm just going to put maybe keep my strength around there. And you can see now that it's starting to fall between the kind of bricks there. If you hold shift, by the way, that will minus off from our paint range. Okay, so now what we have is the ability to use a height map combined with our vertex color to get more detail there. So the next thing we want to do is actually start assigning this to our different channels. So at the moment we're only using an albedo, but what we want to do as well is use this, say, on a normal map too. So just to make it simple, we'll just add another lerp into place here, and we'll go to our brick material and drag that into place, go to our concrete and drag our normal map in there. Making sure that we line up our nodes correctly here, so we know that we want our concrete to go into A and our brick into B. And we know we want that to drop into the alpha. And we'll drag that into the normal slot. If we just hit save, we should see that update kind of nicely in the viewport. Right, so now we have our albedo. We obviously want to control our other elements too, such as our such as our roughness. So let's select our two roughness maps. One roughness map there. Go to brick. Our brick roughness map there. And we'll add another lerp into the scene, into the material, link him into there, and make sure that we get these the right way around. So we want our brick down there going into B, and we want our concrete going into A. And we'll drag that into roughness. And let's just clean this up a little bit. So one thing you do end up with Vertex paint is a lot of actual nodes. Just bear in mind we want to have potentially painting 3 different channels here, so we want to make sure that we've got access to all those. So let's increase our strength a little bit, and that'll paint into there. Now the next thing we want to do then is have a look at our blend power here. So let's just try messing with this. So let's try ramping that up to 10, and we can see it update so that we're actually starting to get a lot more of a nice contrast here. So basically, if you imagine that black is the lowest value and white is the highest, that blend power is kind of deciding how that kind of falls off between those two values. So, and how the vertex paint value combines with the height value. So just tweaking this setting can be really useful just to kind of achieve better results. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is probably have a look at how we would add another channel into this. For a start, you might want to control metallic, depending on whether you've got any metals. So I'm basically just using dirt, this kind of whitewash style material on here. So I'm not going to be using any metallic, so I don't need to control the metallic node, the metallic slot. So we're going to add another lerp into our scene. Maybe another lerp down there too, and another lerp there. That's going to plug, sorry, that does not plug into alpha. That's going to plug into B. And what I'm going to do is go to dirt here, and I'm going to add the dirt albedo, stick that up there. I'm going to add the dirt roughness, up to there. And I'm going to add the dirt normal there. And let's just expand this just to make it easier for you guys to see what I'm doing. So what we want to do is plug our lerp into B and him into A. Again, exactly the same here. Lerp into B. Oops. And that into A. I've already plugged the lerp in there. And then what we want to do is exactly on here, we want to duplicate these slots. But we could probably keep the blend power as is, to be fair. We'll duplicate these four. We'll drop our green this time into A. And make sure your green also goes into the add there. Drop our height map into there. And now basically this has given us the ability to paint in green as well, and therefore get a different texture set. So we'll do that into alpha, that into alpha, and that into alpha. And then we should be able to link that into normal, that into roughness, and that into base color. So now we have added the ability to not only paint in red, but also paint in green. So let's just save that. Take that out of the way. And you can see earlier on I painted a little bit of green on this asset. Let's just delete him out. Don't need him anymore. So if I just go back to my Vertex paint, this time select green, hold shift, and we'll just take that off. And what I probably want to do here is just get a little bit of dirt kind of along the bottom of the asset here. So you can see, because this already has a different material on it, it's already kind of painting, so it's not quite right. So what I'm going to do here, just to make sure it's clear what's going on, is just stick like a standard Lambert onto that, like that. I'm going to hold shift just to, and just click just to take this off. I've just got some kind of dirt down there, and you might want to add like a bit kind of up here as well, like so, and even just like little patches of it around here. So one thing worth mentioning actually is that depending on the order that you have these in, so obviously I've got my kind of concrete whitewashing material here, and then I've got the dirt next in the chain. So the dirt is going to paint on top of that. So I guess your dirt should kind of always be like your last material, because your dirt's obviously going to sit on top of your dirt's going to sit on top of whatever was before. It's like the last thing to be applied. Okay, so the next thing we want to do then, we can add one more channel. Maybe we'll just leave it like that though. But there is one thing I want to show you about kind of limiting your the amount of textures. So a DirectX 11 feature is that limitation is that you can only have 16 textures. So you can see that in our stats down here. So we have 12 out of 16 there. So there are two really good ways to kind of save on this. The first one is to combine your roughness, metallic, and occlusion into one map. In this case, we have all of our nodes split up, like so. Like this can often happen, like when you're using kind of pre-made textures and stuff like that. So what we can do to sort that out is just to change our sampler source to shared wrap. And you see how our texture samplers has now gone down. So it's a really useful thing for if you have too many textures. And if you're painting 3 different materials or 4 different materials on this, that is going to happen unless you've got kind of combined assets. So you can do that on, I know you can do it on your black and white ones. I kind of tend to only need to do it on those. So I never really bother with the albedo, but we can do the albedo anyway. I'm not sure how resource intensive this is, like whether it actually costs more than just using kind of standard texture sampler. But what it does do, it allows us to dramatically reduce our texture samplers so that we've got no issue using kind of multiple, more than 16. Right, so we've got our kind of two different things that we can paint. Let's look at how we would then assign this to this kind of concrete down here. So we're going to use parameters. So the first thing we're going to want to do is just go for each of our aspects of our material and convert them to parameters, the ones that we need. So I'm going to call this height map. We already have blend power. So next we'll do our albedos. So we'll do right click, convert to parameter. Now I know this one uses red, so I'm going to call this albedo R for red. And this is our base. So I'm going to convert to parameter and call this albedo base, like so. Then I'm going to right click on this one, and we know we are using the green channel for that. In fact, let's just expand this out so you can see it all again. Right click, convert to parameter, and we'll call this albedo G. And here we know this is the roughness base, so we'll call this roughness base. We'll right click here, convert to parameter, roughness R, and this one roughness G. And exactly the same on these, just convert to parameter, normal base, normal R, right click, parameter, normal G, like so. Okay, I think that's all the parameters we need to control. We could easily add more things in here, like we could add a roughness control using like an add with a scalar. We could add a normal control as well to increase the kind of strength of our normal and so on too. But I think just for this example, let's keep it a bit more simple and we'll just leave it like that. Okay, so our Vertex Paint example is there. Let's just make a new folder within a folder for Vertex Paint. And we'll drop that in there. And if we just right click and go to create material instance, I'm just going to call this, I don't know, concrete or something. So we have our albedo base. We'll stick that onto our kind of concrete material there. And what we want to do is go to our concrete here and just assign that into our albedo. And do the same with our other assets too. So normal base, drop that into there. Roughness base. Drop that into there like so. So you can see now we've got that assigned on there, so we can start to kind of paint there, and you can do exactly the same like with the stone bricks too. Let's just have a quick look at something I forgot to add into this. So we'll go back to our Vertex Paint example again. So another thing you might want to do is actually kind of control the tiling as well. So all we're going to do here is just add a multiply. We'll add a texture chords. We'll add a scalar. In fact, let's call that UV tiling. And we'll drop those into there, and we can drop that into UVs, but not only can we drop it into our height map, but we can also drop it into our albedo and all of these kind of other slots too. Like you might want to have it that you oh, and of course one thing we do want to do is make sure that our default value is set to 1 so that it tiles 1 time. So you see how your node tree gets pretty messy when you start doing a kind of Vertex Paint shader. Okay, linked, yep, all good. So we just hit save there. We can clean this up a little bit. so. Make sure those are all in there, and just try and keep everything, because you're just duplicating all these kind of node trees here. So if you just keep them all roughly the same layout, then at least you can at least you understand what each one is. That these are kind of like the same kind of setups. Okay, so if we just hit save on that, and then if we just go down to our UV tiling, we should be able to set that to 2 or whatever it is that you kind of need. So with our height map here, obviously we don't really want to be using that brick height map. We can already see it. Oops. You can already see it having an impact there, basically sounding like that. So you will need a different kind of height map for this, and we do have a height map here, and we can drop that into place and see what kind of impact that has. But obviously you can mess around, like you don't have to use the exact kind of height map that you output for this material. You could try out a bunch of different ones as well. So you might have a different height map in dirt that you could kind of try out, see how that kind of works too. And then obviously you just do exactly the same again, just come in here and just kind of click and kind of paint out, control your strength, control your fall off. Even use like a whack-a-mole so to do this, kind of paint those bits out. And then we can do the same. We'll bring our brush size down a bit here. Just like paint some dirt along this edge, and hold shift and kind of take out any areas that we don't want. On my asset here, you'll notice how I've kind of screwed up the normals a little bit here. So what I might do is just come into this, soften harden edge. To be honest with you, I could probably strip out some of these polys here. There's no need for, absolutely no need to have that kind of many in there. We'll just check our settings in here. Maybe set to 45. There we go, let's fix that. You can see, you think about where you actually want to have kind of dirt on this asset. So we probably have quite a lot around the bottom here. So you can see here, just because I've got that other, the other Vertex paint thing that I've made before I did this tutorial, it's got a different kind of setup on it. So I'm painting like different stuff onto this based off the material. So that's probably another good point to mention. Actually, you can kind of split your assets up a little bit too. So if you want to avoid like painting from that edge onto that edge like that, just you can have it as two separate models, and so on. Okay, so I don't think there's anything else to show you here. Right, one other thing to check, obviously, is your blend power. So if we just come here and look at our painting there, let's just try setting that up to like say 20 or 1. I'm not in the right one here. Sorry about that. Okay, just realised here I haven't plugged that into there, so that's why it wasn't picking up on that. So that should now be okay. So let's just jump back in, yeah, so you can see here, just by messing with your blend power, you can achieve like different results and so on, like that. And you can obviously do exactly the same with your material on there too. So just to show you the mistake I made there, so I did do it quite quickly. So I've got one blend power here, assigning to both my red and my green channel. So I only had it initially linked to my red channel, which meant when I was painting this kind of dirt layer, which is the green, the blend power was having no impact. So now that I've linked it to there as well, it works fine. So maybe it'd be better if I actually did this, just clean this up a little bit, like that. You can see my blend power there now. Okay, so in the next tutorial, we're going to look at how we would use combined roughness, occlusion, and metallic, just to save us a bunch of kind of texture samples. One other thing I just want to mention here is that once we've got our material instancing set up, we kind of want to stick to using channels in exactly the same slots where we can. So if we always have the dirt in the same channel, then we can always paint dirt using our kind of green slot or whatever here. So yeah, it's really kind of a little bit of planning there can really help you out, especially if you're going to be using the same thing across kind of multiple materials. So for example here, instead of calling this albedo G, I might call this albedo dirt, and then that's always going to be dirt. Whereas the others might change, like metallic scratches or you know, grass and moss. Dirt might always stay there, kind of thing.